Welcome back to KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit digital source for everybody who's working in the nonprofit community. We help your organization survive and thrive. I'm Ruth Bombigas, and I have a very special guest, someone I've known for a very long time, although I won't tell really naughty little stories, and that's Corey Scholes, who's Director of Education at the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation.
Hi, pleasure to be here.
It's so great to have you. We go back to when you were a little kid.
That is truth.
Working with tagging along with your dad, who was very active in community theater. So it's so fun for me to get to sit down and have that adult conversation, and you're doing amazing work at the Kauffman Foundation. Share with us, we had Matt Posel on recently, who was talking a little bit about the foundation overall. Your area is in the educational sphere. Define that for us. What does that mean?
So Mr. Kauffman's big beliefs about how to create communities were investing in people's education, helping people become entrepreneurs, and then taking care of your city with our civic assets. So our department, if you will, focuses on education, and we span from pre-K to post-secondary. So we cover the whole gamut with giving grants to all those different areas, pre-K, K-12, the talent space, innovation, sustainability, post-secondary. So
that's
you
huge.
Name anything in education, we kind of help with it.
And is the focus strictly here in Kansas City, or
So what makes
nationally?
the education giving a little different than other parts of the foundation is it is local giving. Mr. Kauffman's wishes were to keep all the education money in Kansas City. So there's so many things to do in education that you could pepper that all over the country and make a little bit of an impact, or you could keep it in our
local
city and make a big impact. So that's what we've chosen to do.
So within your area, you just named a whole bunch of subset areas. Let's dive into that pre-K sphere, since we were talking with Scott Hall, and that's a chamber priority. How does Kauffman then play in there? What are you doing in that area?
So my colleague Hallie French is in charge of our pre-K initiatives, and every year there's kind of a different focus as to what our financial priorities would be, but it's all to make that sector thrive in our city. And so she funds centers here in Kansas City and really tries, something she and I have been talking about and thinking about is how to connect the talent work that I do with the early childhood work that she does, to really think about how do we support pre-K teachers, because it's hard enough to support teachers in general, and pre-K teachers probably make even less money than K-12 teachers, who already don't make enough money.
And there's so much more research that has come out just in the last couple of months about the importance of intervention education by the time a child is 3.
That's right.
So I would think that area is in need of support, and thank goodness that you all are in that. All right, so let's jump into regular school. Let's
K-12.
K-12.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously our biggest investment well, maybe it's not obvious. It seems obvious to me. Our biggest investment is the charter school that we started and support, the Kauffman School.
Give us an update, because you headed that for a while.
I did indeed get to serve as the interim CEO, which was a amazing 2 years of my life that had a whole lot of learning. I've never built a building before, so it was a very interesting few years. But it's one of the highest performing schools in the state. Something that we do that's different, I think, than a lot of schools is we take young people who are in 5th grade, who are mostly not on grade level, and then we get them to grade level by the time they graduate. And so we matriculated our first class of kids last year.
How many kids?
It was only 49 kids last year.
That's a lot of kids.
Well, I know, but our class is coming up. We started in a temporary facility, so we had small classes for our first couple of years, but now we take 200 5th graders every year. Wow. So we're going to have big classes coming around. We're at about 1,100 kids right now. But like in our first graduating class, we sent kids to Brown University. I'm drawing a blank now. Brown, Spelman, Morehouse, University of Chicago,
And
lots
state
of,
schools.
yeah.
So, but across that gamut,
Yeah.
that spectrum.
Yeah, so that was pretty exciting to
That's
know that when
really
they were
exciting.
in 5th graders, they were significantly below grade level on their test scores, to seeing a kid get a full ride scholarship to Brown University is
That's amazing.
That's a lot of ground to cover.
And what a leg up. I mean, that was so much of Mr. K's kind of philosophy of life.
yeah, no, he completely believed that education is what changes kids' lives, and that investment is providing life-changing experiences for, it's going to be for thousands of kids year over year, which is pretty incredible.
Let's talk about talent, because that's an area that you're really
My heart, yeah.
hyper-focused in everything. Tell us, what does that mean? What do you do?
Yeah, so again, with the Kansas City focus, we're really trying to figure out how to attract and develop and retain our top talent here in Kansas City. In case you don't know, the teaching profession needs people all the time.
All the time.
And it seems to be a trend that's getting worse. Less people going into the field of education. And so it's something that we pay a lot of attention to. The really good news in Kansas City is there's so much happening here that it's kind of becoming a destination and a place that people come to work in education. And so we really try to think first, we start with how do you just get young people here? It's you were talking
As we were
about
talking, the natural appeal is not necessarily the landscape.
Right, and so we invest in some organizations like Literacy Lab and City Year that attract, that bring us 50 to 75 young people every year that move to our city to work in our schools. And so that's just a whole pool of kids that we can pull from. And then we invest in organizations that certify teachers. So Teach for America, the Kansas City Teacher Residency. We work with a partnership with UMKC. And then it's okay, now we've attracted them, now we've got people getting certified, now we have to kind of support them. So we do a lot of grants to organizations that support teachers. We have a grant with Harvard University that's doing staff development with a cohort of teachers here in Kansas City, and with NATE, which is the National
Association of
to Advanced
Teachers
Teacher Education. There we go. That's done. We've done 4 cohorts of teachers, over years worth of time, where teachers are getting development in how to become a better peer-to-peer teacher. So they don't want to be a principal. They want to work with their grade level teams and those kind of things. And then we move into the principal space. How do we attract principals and certify principals? And then we even do a cohort of superintendents. So again, we work with a lot of different organizations and trying to really make sure, but there's an energy here around education. A lot of our organizations work together and support one another.
Collaboration.
We actually meet, my colleague Jacqueline and I meet with all of our grantees every 2 months together as a team, so that we can figure out how do they support each other, work together. Is there things that they can, could they have events co-sponsored with one another? And they do really a lot of work together, which has kind of turned into a really neat feeling, and it's kind of attracting folks. They're doing a lot of cool things in Kansas City in the education space. So that's a huge difference than the last time that I spoke to you years ago.
Well, you're making progress. That's a good deal. It's working.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit on City Year. We had Mark Donovan, president of the Chiefs, who's
our board chair.
That is his passion. And I said, well, we're going to have Corey on, so we're going to find out the real inside skinny and all the details.
Sure, and that's a big heart organization for me. Something that's really special about City Year is City Year doesn't just come to a city. You have to fight for it, kind of. And so I got to lead that process here at the time with Steve Green, who's the superintendent of Kansas City Public Schools. And we spent a year kind of taking teachers and parents and community members to go see it, and is this something that we want? And the whole community decided after a year that, yep, we wanted to bring it to Kansas City. And so we did that 4 years ago. We started with 16 core members, so there's 16 young people that were giving a year of their life in a middle or high school classroom in reading and math, tutoring young people. Now we have 68 core members, and it's in elementary, middle, and high school. So we've, again, expanded a lot. And these are young people who are ages 17 to 24 that come in, they do before school tutoring, they work all day long in a reading or math classroom, and then they run the after school programs. So they're doing a lot of work as AmeriCorps volunteers in our school system. And currently they're in 7 schools in the Kansas City area. So
wow,
we're really lucky to have them in our city.
Now, does City Year become an ongoing stay here forever? Is there a, okay, we've been here, we're done?
Yes, so City Year's never closed a site. And that's not because they're not doing good work. I think sometimes people hear that and go, wait, they haven't run themselves out of town. But their purpose is to, they just keep getting more and more kids in the pipeline. And their national goal is to any city they serve in to graduate, to have 80% of the students on track and on time for high school. So as kids matriculate out, new kids matriculate
Can come in.
Yeah.
And then when those core members are done with their year, what happens? Is there anything that goes on to try to keep those folks here?
Oh yes, that is a huge thing that we work on. And again, that's kind of why the pipelines that we've created for young people. We Teach for America, Kansas City Teacher Residency, and UMKC, who all certify teachers, have been really working with our core members to see, like, hey, is this something you'd want to stay in? Is this, because they're not certified teachers when they're done with City Year, so they'd have to go into a program. So we work really hard with our core members and our certifying organizations to see if there's a match. Obviously, we're not going to try to force a kid to stay and be a teacher, but it is a huge goal for us that they either stay and do another year of City Year, or they go into some organization that's youth serving to support our city, because once you have them here, we don't want them to leave. So.
What's your retention rate? Do you have any idea how many have kind of hung around and, not necessarily teaching, but doing something else?
Yeah, last year, 30% of all of our core members either went back into City Year or went into one of those TFA, KCTR, or UMKC. Some stayed and went, into other things, but lots stayed in the education sector.
Wow. So with all these organizations that you work with, what's coming up? What's the next great innovation or step?
Well, one of the big things, so our foundation has a huge investment in real world learning. So we're really talking about how kids learn differently, and that there's lots of options when you graduate from high school. And so one of the big things for me to figure out next, right, is how are we supporting, if we're asking high school students to leave with like a market value asset and something that they've done an internship and really worked in the workforce, that's different than what we've asked of high school kids before. So now we have to kind of back map and think, how are we training teachers for that? Because that's a different way of teaching young people than like
what you and I did.
Yeah, well, right. Sit in your desk and listen to me. And so now we're really thinking about how are we going to start supporting teachers, because that's going to look, what teaching looked like then is going to look really different now. So we're really working with the superintendents that are in our real world learning initiative and our schools of education and our teacher prep institutes to really think about what's the next phase of teaching look like, so that we can make sure we're supporting that as it becomes more and more prominent in the future.
And folks can go learn about all you're doing in this area on the website, Kauffman.org?
Yes.
Do they have to backslash education or anything like that?
No, just you'll find
easy?
education. Yeah.
Easy to find.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit your journey to Kauffman.
Sure. Yeah, I'm lucky. I grew up here. I live in the house I was born in. And then I went to Miege and then went off to Westminster for undergraduate school and majored in economics, and just thought that was where I was headed. And then I got a master's degree in education and started teaching in Chicago. And then I was a teacher and a vice principal and a principal here in Kansas City Public Schools. And then one day, I received a call from the Kauffman Foundation that said, hey, we're going to open a school and we need some help. And I had opened schools before, so I was like, okay. And so kind of the first part was I was going to help them think about the Kauffman School. And one thing led to another, and they actually asked me to work there. So I've been there almost 8 years now and philanthropy was not really on my radar, but education philanthropy is definitely
a passion.
Yeah.
Because you've walked it.
Yeah, and a lot of people, not in our city necessarily, but there's a lot of people who do philanthropy, education philanthropy, that don't have any practical experience in education. And so I think it gives me a little bit of a leg up because
You've gone through the system.
Yeah, as we think about things that might help and enhance the system, I've been in it for a really long time. And so it is the greatest job I could ever imagine. And I love that I get to support our city and support teachers and support, what I've always loved most, which is kids.
We're lucky that you do what you do. Do you ever miss teaching?
It will be my retirement job.
Really?
Yeah, I'll go back to, I will go back to it. I know so much more now and have learned so much through this job, through other jobs, that I would totally, when my daughter's off in college and that's all paid for and I can take a different job, I would love to teach for several years before I'm done working.
Well, lucky kids. Well, and you are teaching, in essence, in what you do at Kauffman. You're providing money, but you're also helping to guide all those different organizations and entity in new directions to further education.
We try to say that, money isn't the only asset that the Kauffman Foundation has, that the people that work there and the things that we get to learn and know, it's our responsibility to pass that along to any organization we're working with. So I try to do that. I hope I do that.
You do it well. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Ruth.
and bringing us up to speed.
Yeah,
And all
appreciate you
things
having me.
Education.
Thanks.